Hello, Leapers. It's Matt and Chris here, and we're very happy today to have a special guest. It's friend to the podcast, our very dear friend, Deborah Pratt. Welcome back to the show, Deborah.
Thank you very much. Great to be back.
And particularly special as well because after so many years' involvement with Quantum Leap, this is the first time you're directing an episode. Amazing.
Yes, it's true. It's true. I was head writer and executive producing, and every time there was a fire, I had to, it seemed like it was my turn to direct something, but I always made sure there was a Black woman directing. Of those 4 episodes, we're the only women that directed, as a matter of fact. I remember once they came to me and said, the script is completely not working. The studio and the network are rejecting it. We need a script by Monday. It was Friday. I had 3 days to write a script. I wrote Sea Bride.
Oh, you wrote that in 3 days. Wow. That's a personal favorite. Congratulations.
Thank you very much. Mine too. And funny, with family style, I wanted to have a big Bollywood dance number. So when I wrote Sea Bride, I went to Scott and I said, "Can you tango?" And he went, "I can learn." I said, "I know, you can learn anything." And so I called a dear friend of mine, Bobby Duncan, who is no longer with us, and said, "I'm going to write a scene that has to be played out against a tango number." And he said, "Got it." And I thought he nailed it. Scott nailed it. Beverly nailed it. I mean, everybody just had a great time. And then the interesting thing was, after we did it, I saw it in like 4 or 5 television episodes. I saw it in 2 movies where suddenly it became the thing to do. So it made me very proud that Quantum did it first.
So when you say that you were slated to direct episodes of the series during the original run, do you recall which episodes those were? Were they specifically ones that you had written, or you had just come up in the rotation for that season, or how did that work back then?
Well, they definitely had a rotation, and at the beginning of the season, they put you into slots. And I don't know that I could recall. I wanted to say it was one of the courtroom dramas. I don't think it was the third part of, maybe it was part 3 of the trilogy, or So Help Me God. It was one of those 2 I remember. Anyway, it didn't happen. And I didn't think we were going to be taken off the air. Wait a minute, I haven't directed.
So season 6 finally comes along 25 years later, and your executive producer, was this part of the goal for you as this all kicked off, that you would finally get your chance in the director's chair this year?
I said, if I'm coming back to do this show, I'm directing more than 1 episode. So I'm directing one in August in season 2. So hopefully it'll just keep going in that direction, because it's such a fun show. The cast is so great. The scripts are wonderful. I love everybody, producing, cast, crew, writers. I feel very blessed that the show has been embraced and created in a way that it can grow and prove my point that Quantum Leap can be a legacy show that goes on for 10, 20 years, and movies and games and toys and franchise stuff. And I couldn't get people to see or hear that. And I'm hoping that this time I've made a leap home.
So one of the things we've been speaking about this weekend is how Family Style is such a small, self-contained family story that it harkens back a lot to the original series. Did that make that an appealing episode for you to direct, or was it just that it just happened to be the one assigned?
It happened to be, when I saw the story come in, I was very interested in it and said so. When I saw the script come in, I knew that it was, and that I could take all the magic from the original show and sprinkle it in the script, because Adritha's script it was about humanity and people and food and all the things that make us human. It was a very humanizing story, and it set up things like prejudice and the struggles of an immigrant family. It set up the loss of a family member. It set up children growing up. I mean, it hit on so many central family core elements that as soon as I read it, I said, I got this. And I tried to talk them into doing a Bollywood number at the end. That's my big dream. I want to direct a Bollywood movie with a big dance number. But Adritha, her sensibility of the culture was so enlightening to me. And, I got to do all the foodie stuff that I had seen in The Bear. And, once I got the script and saw the heart in it, I immediately saw the humor in it. And I told them, I said, this is going to feel like a comedy, but it'll be a roller coaster ride. So it'll go from comedy to drama and then back to comedy. And to me, that was truly the gift of Quantum Leap, that you could go through so many emotions in telling this story. And I was excited because Raymond had said to me, and I had seen it in just him having fun around the set. He had said that he had gone to clowning school, which is why he's so physical, and his performances, I think, contributes to that. So he was right in it and right on it, and had some beautiful, wonderful, just humorous moments that I could capture to help tell the story. And I think it got to expand his character, and he got to have some fun. Yes, it was dramatic, when Kathy and her goon pulled a gun on him. But also when Kathy said to him, when he came up after the restaurant was destroyed, and said, "You did this." And I loved her reading. I wouldn't, I would never. But she said something that's so Karen about the moment, as I saw it, when she said, and if you reported it, they wouldn't believe you, they would believe me, wouldn't they? And it was such a Quantum Leap moment in that sense, where someone would have the opportunity to see in themselves, wow, that's that mentality of, you think you're better than me just because I'm an immigrant or my skin is brown. And it opens a dialogue for a conversation, which we desperately need in this country. It's not you acting out, it's you watching someone else act out, and it's how you relate to it. Which side of that coin do you stand on, and how watching it makes you feel? I think that's Quantum Leap in general. You watch a show that you love, what makes you love it? I think the humanity, again, I go back to that in Sonali's journey. And Nandini did such a beautiful job in it when she had to come to the conclusion that her children were grown. She didn't have to be the mother because they were grown. And that whole last moment between she and Ben is so poignant for him, because he got to do what he couldn't do in his own life, childhood, was just to say, I love you to his mother. And for her, which was to accept the fact that it was okay to let your children, to love them with open arms. Your arms are open, they can always come back, but you're open now. I trust you as an adult. And I think those messages were important for me as a director to make sure they shone brightly, because they're so relatable. They're so universal.
It's funny you mentioned the fact that it was kind of like a roller coaster. It's going to seem like a comedy, and then we're going to go to the drama. When we spoke to Nandini yesterday, she had mentioned the fact that sometimes she felt like she was on like a dramatic set, and then all of a sudden it was like being on like a 4-camera comedy. And she said that you had helped guide her through that because it got very intense at points. And we also discussed the fact that for such on paper, such a harsh character, like someone that is just stubborn and prideful and will not see anybody else's point of view, she never came across as unlikable. And she and you had a discussion about that to try to thread that needle. Can you talk a little bit about that process? Because a lot was riding on her performance in this episode.
Yeah, I know that was the big fear of everybody at the network and the studio. And I said, if we cast it correctly, you won't have anything to worry about. And so what I mean, there were several times that she and I sat down and talked. But I said, in this opening scene, I need to see your strength, but at the same time, I need you to be a mommy. For you, this woman standing behind you is still 12 years old. And when Ben says, yes, chef, and she goes, yes, chef, and she punks his nose, and that was her idea, and it was just the perfect gesture to say, how about yes, mummy, right? Those things made her endearing, and she's a wonderful actress. She took direction incredibly well. There was a depth to her that I truly appreciated, and she was struggling with something she didn't even know she was struggling about. And the big emotion that plays into it is fear. You've lost your husband. You're about to lose your children. How do you keep the one business that he left you going, and it's already falling off of a cliff? So she's questioning her very existence, and at the same time trying to be as strong as her husband was. And, you know, the other thing I thought Adritha did so beautifully was she brought in the essence of the culture. And her understanding of, I knew music was incredibly important. Her understanding of the music, she was very helpful in selecting all of that. The wardrobe, I was shooting the scene in the restaurant when Mira and I can't think of it. Well, Gory is the other cousin, came in with the gifts and the flowers for the year of his death. And I think Gory came in, and her scarf looked strange to me. And I reached over to try to adjust it. And she said, every fold in this scarf has meaning. And I went, wow. And I stepped back and I said, I don't know this culture. Please put it back the way it was. So it was. And Adritha, I think in writing that, it was very specific about what food she chose to put in the episode, how these women dressed, how each of the family members dressed, so that there was, and I thought it was very important. I remember talking to our costume director, Genevieve. I said, I want this show to be about jewel tones. I want everybody to be in golds and rubies and sapphires and the colors that bring in the depth of what I think to be the culture. And I think that was a really good choice. She did a beautiful job in the richness of it that I don't think the series has the opportunity to reflect. So not only you were telling a story about a family, but you were telling a story about a culture and the food that pulls them together. And which is why I'm asking everybody that watches the show to tweet your favorite food, tweet your favorite, family dinner story. And if you're an immigrant, tweet what's important about your family coming together around the table for food. There's a scene at the end where I set everybody coming around a table, because that was very important at the end, where they talk about they owe $30,000 in debt. And then Mira says, or Podamini, I'm I forgive me if I mess these names up, says, I got a big bonus. I'm happy to chip in. And then somebody else says, I'm happy to chip in. I wanted that whole thing to happen around a table. Even though they're not sitting down and eating, they come together around this table. So there was a lot of symbolism that it was important for me to weave in the storytelling.
One of the things that I think, Matt, you might have mentioned it already in your opening statements, was the fact that this one felt so much like the original Quantum, in the sense that we got a lot of family backstory for Ben too, which expanded on some of the stuff that we saw in What a Disaster, It's a Disaster, a Disaster. I don't know what we're calling it these days, but I wanted to know if that specifically you were trying to evoke some of the feeling of the old show, or was it just happened to be in the script? Were there elements that you said, yes, this is so quintessentially Quantum Leap, let's play this aspect up? And I asked that because when I watched this episode, both times I felt more connected to Ben as the leaper, as the lead, than I have in many of the previous episodes. And I think it's due to that old Quantum Leap feeling. And it also, it brought me to tears both times I watched it. So it really did have a lot of the DNA of the old show, while bringing some of the strongest elements of the new show to the fore. I wanted to know what kind of balancing act you did there, or was it even conscious?
No, it was very conscious. When I read the beats for the story, I thought, this has the potential of being in my mind, a true OG Quantum Leap. When I got the script, I read it and I went, and then I knew I was directing it. I said, I know all the magic places. I know all the magic places because this is my other child, of how to make this a genuine old school Quantum Leap. And so I really went through when I was setting my shots, and I said, I want it to be fun. I think I told you before, I have 4 H's that I feel make a Quantum Leap, which is history, heart, humor. I always forget the 4th one. History, heart, humor, and
hope.
Hope, the most important one. And this one had it all. History, heart, humor, and hope. I'll get it right someday. I need more coffee. What are you talking about? And it had it all. And I thought, this is my opportunity to marry these shows. And Adritha was a dream. She taught me so much about the Indian culture and the love of the food. You cannot watch the show without wanting to go order Indian food. It was fun in the sense that, I said to Raymond, you love this. You have to play that you love the idea that you've leapt into a chef and that it made you fall in love with this family. So through the food, through your dream of being a chef, and Addison was incredibly supportive in that line where she said, better than sports, you like food. So again, it was very well written, very well, elements were very woven in. And then I was able to bend the performances so that you fell in love with these people. And even when they had the argument and Manisha walked out on the family, you saw the stakes being raised of this family's fallen apart. They've lost the father, the sister's being, ignored and disrespected by the mother. The mother is trying to be respected by her daughter, which were such universal family issues. How do you become a woman under the umbrella of a strong woman? Is a huge question that most girls have to ask themselves. And the first time that you stand up to your mom and says, no, Mom, I'm grown, is a shock to both of you. So the reality of the story and the humanity of the story and the universality of the story were on the page, and I saw them through my lens, which is, I think, why I was able to get the performances because I knew what to ask for. And the actors were so wonderful about getting it. They got it. And Bill too, what was set up in the very beginning of Sam's loss. I'll never stop doing that. Of Ben's loss of his mother and the fact that he never got to say goodbye. And to give him that was a huge opportunity. And I knew how important it was for the show, for the character, to endear the audience, to make them understand, and to the people that no one is, or so rarely are you there when someone you love that much as your mother leaves the world. And that last, I love you, to get to say that is important. And that's some of the magic of Quantum Leap. I think I told you a story about a young man who related to me watching the show with his parents, and they were getting a divorce, and his world was falling apart. And he said, I wish Sam would leap into my life and fix my life. And I thought that's why the show is incredibly successful, because it gives you the hope of somebody coming in to fix it. And then the reality that it's up to you to at least fix it for yourself, if not actually fix the situation that it is based on. So.
Yeah. The end of this one reminded me so much of the end of Promised Land, when Sam gets that final hug with his dad, which he never even got in the leap home. He just said, goodbye, Dad, made the shot, and he left. So giving Sam that closure, I honestly, I felt like I was watching Scott. I'm going to stop gushing now. It's not to denigrate Raymond, but I felt like Scott was back on the set. That's how much I love this episode. And we're talking about sort of the blending of the old series and the new series, and knowing the sweet spots and finding that DNA. It's funny to me, we haven't been able to speak to you since the series premiered. The last time we spoke to you, you had permission to speak to us, but you really couldn't say anything about the new show or the process. So I want to go back and have that interview too, if we can, just spend a couple of minutes talking about, this whirlwind. I mean, it's from last September to now. It's crazy to me that we're almost done with the first season of the new Quantum Leap, and we're just now getting to talk to you about the whole process. Can we go back to the beginning and just talk about what you've been doing, what you've been feeling, what's it like to bring this baby back to the world?
Well, I'm grateful to be a voice. And to add it's a tough situation, because I want it to evolve in the direction that it's going to evolve. So I don't want to say, go this way, go this way, go this way. So a lot of which I have done, but a lot of what I call myself keeper of the lore. So I can talk to them about, how Ziggy is used, how when Addison should just hit a button and pop out rather than walk away, how, and they've bent the realities that we originally created of having her be in a scene and sitting on something. But we just play the fact that there are chairs in the imaging chamber. And the suspension of disbelief has worked in that sense. The fact that Ryan and Stephen, when they conceived of the present, conceived it wrapped in a love story, I thought was very special and unique. And also the fact that, unlike the original Quantum Leap, because we couldn't afford a fancy headquarters, the audience, was trapped in the past with Sam, and the only connection to the future was Al. So Al's sentimentality about history was through his lens. He had experienced civil rights because he marched in the civil rights. He marched for civil rights. Probably walked in Black Lives Matter, So he has seen those things and brings a personal history to them. I like the fact that they're playing that the personal history of all the members of the Quantum Leap team come in sentimentality. Last 2 week ago episode, Let Them Play, was beautifully done, I thought, when Ian told their story that reflected into the character. And so it's finding a balance of allowing for the creation that I think Martin and Dean and the writers have so carefully crafted, taking us into the next evolution, the next generation of this series. So you can say, okay, it is Quantum Leap, but it's a different direction. So if I could describe it the best way is in parallel worlds, there's room for multiple versions of it, just like Star Trek. You may have loved the original Star Trek, but Next Generation was just not your flavor. And Enterprise might have been closer to what you thought it should be, because at its core, it was a series of anthological moralistic stories. Very biblical in that sense. And I think that what made each show successful was there was enough of that in every one of them, and there's enough, cool science fiction to take care of the nerds like me that I can switch into. So I think what they've done by introducing this fabulous headquarters and the technology that Ziggy has become is really cool and really fun. And the only thing that does in keeping us in the present is created two shows that now have to blend together. So I was very lucky in this one because I had a little more latitude in those 42 minutes that you get in television to really get into the heart of the family show. And then the story of that's going to take us through and hang on to your seats to the season finale was so amazing because, again, it was a very personal story for Ian and Magic. Oh my God, Ernie Hudson. I love him so much. I told you when we were talking casting and I knew that Magic was coming back. I just went, Ernie Hudson, Ernie Hudson, Ernie Hudson, Ernie Hudson, Ernie Hudson. That's it. That's the only person that can play it. And I believe that he nailed it. He nails it every week. He is the father of Quantum Leap that, I guess in Dean's own way represented too. But, and then we got to see a side of Ian in the relationship with Rachel. They tell their story and question themselves as to their capability of making the decision that was made, not knowing why. And I think it really triggers the rest of this journey for this season, which hang on to your seats. It's going to be a bumpy flight. That's all I can.
Just sticking with the Ian plot for a moment. We noticed Mason Mason had their real life partner to work with. Was
Alex,
that? Yeah. Was that their suggestion? Did that just come about naturally through casting? And what kind of impact did that have on how the scenes played out?
Well, there was an instant chemistry for sure. And we had met Alice up in Vancouver and liked her, and I'd seen her a bunch of other times. So when the idea came up that she was available to do it, it was a no-brainer for sure. For sure. So, yeah, that wasn't a big thing. It's instant chemistry between them because they love each other and they care about each other. So they could play that moment really brilliantly. And it also gave potential for future storylines. I hope. I haven't seen it yet, but I hope.
Well, when you mentioned future storylines and the potential that was sort of embedded in the dynamic that you set up in this episode, especially with Ian seeing their ex-partner, we finally got out of the project a little bit and saw these characters more as individuals instead of workers. And I am wondering if the show is going to maybe lean a little bit more into that as the breakneck pace of the mystery box starts to wrap itself up. Do you think that we'll have a chance? Because one thing that is very marked about this episode is that it just had a chance to breathe. There were just some nice, intimate scenes that weren't all about chasing the next clue. And I think the show benefited from it. Will we be seeing more of this type of storytelling where applicable as the show goes on? If you can even answer that.
I'll let you know as to how well we do on Monday night. Because that's what determines a lot of that. You know, it really is. Television is interactive in its own special way. You know, you have a vision, you have an idea, you have the voice of the characters. I think, again, Martin Dean, the writers, all really understand the direction they want to go, but it can bend based on the love that the audience gives the show. So, you know, it's really up to the response of the audience, I believe. But I trust all these people. You know, I joke saying that Quantum Leap was my middle child. But I see so much potential from what is happening with the show. And I think you nailed it, Christopher, in the sense that there was a breath, and there should be that kind of breath. And maybe not every episode, but we'll see. We'll see what happens. We'll see how people respond to it. And if the love of it is there, why not? Mm-hmm. But you have to remember that the surrounding ingredient is the audience. You know, we're not just saying, here, watch this. We're saying, how does it make you feel? This is a show about how does it make you feel? And as long as we respect that, which we did deeply in the original series, Quantum Leap can live on. That's what I'm talking about.
So, now that you've directed your first episode, you have another one coming up in the second season. When are we going to get a Deborah Pratt script? Are you writing any episodes? Are you part of the writer's room, or is that a possibility going forward?
Well, I'm not part of the writer's room other than I give my notes. So in that sense, yes, I am. Again, it's very important to me that this lives and breathes on its own. I'm writing a motion picture for Quantum Leap. We'll see if it goes. But I believe that the franchise is expandable in that way. If freaking Star Trek can have 9 spinoffs and 9 movies, so can we. I keep saying this. Never say never. Anything is possible.
Okay. I'm really pulling for the Teresa Bruckner return and Troyan's return to the show. So where's Teresa at these days? She'd fit right into the wheelhouse.
A funny story. So after Troyan did Teresa, her father wrote her a reoccurring character in a series called Tequila and Bonetti, about a guy and a talking dog. And she gets on the set as Mariska Hargitay's daughter. And they start calling her by a different name. And she stopped the director and she says, no, my name is only Teresa. All of 6. And we get a call from the set saying, I'm getting notes from a 6-year-old saying that she will not allow herself to be called anything but Teresa. And when I stopped laughing, I said, you're going to have to take her note. I'm sorry. It
Oh,
was
that's
very
great.
funny.
Did she become Teresa in that? It's been a while since I have seen Tequila and Bonetti, but
She
oh,
did.
brilliant! I never noticed that connection.
And then Don wrote her a big episode where she was kidnapped and this, that, and whatever happened. And he brings the episode to her and she looks at it and she says, well, where are the words that I have to say? And so he shows her and there's like pages and pages of dialogue. And she goes, nah, I don't want to do that. That's too many lines. And he said, comes in my office and he goes, talk to your daughter. And I went, what do you mean talk to my daughter? She won't do this. And this flashes back to, I think, the story I told you when we shot Another Mother. She was on the set waiting to do a scene with Dean Stockwell. And Dean Stockwell walked onto the set. And I had the kids, Troyan actually was the only one that was born at the time, down to the set. So he knew her, but suddenly he sees her sitting on his set. And he looks at her and I'm over there, just thinking how cool this is that, my daughter is doing an episode of my show that I wrote. And he comes over to me and he goes, why is she here? And I went, what? Oh, she's going to play the little girl. And he goes, do you need the money? And I went, what? He said, do you need the money? Because if you don't need the money, do not take away that child's, her childhood. And I looked and I saw a child star who had supported his family for his entire life, giving me a piece of advice that was gold. And so after that show aired, I got all kinds of calls from people saying they wanted her in this and that and the other. And I went, no, I don't need the money. And she needs a life. And she was friends with the Olsen twins at that time. And I had experienced going out with them and what it was like to be surrounded by people. And I thought, if she loves this business, she'll find her way back to it. And she did in Pretty Little Liars, for sure. So when Don said, talk to your daughter, I went, well, you talk to her. But based on what Dean said, I'm not going to push this. So he had to rewrite the episode. And I'm trying to think of the actress. She went on. She's still a very successful working actress that he wrote the episode about. He just changed that it was not about her daughter, but about this other young girl. What was her name? She had an unusual name, like Thorin or...
Thora Birch?
Thora Birch. It was Thora Birch. Yeah.
Wow.
I'm pretty sure that's what it was. Anyway, so those are the things that I think make this an interesting family drama.
So, Deborah, it's been a fantastic half hour or so talking to you, as always. Could you maybe just finish by giving us a couple of your key hopes for the future of Quantum Leap and the franchise?
A motion picture or a series of motion pictures, a ride at Universal Studios, a video game. I mean, I feel like there's an animation series that could spin out of it. I think that there is, by the way, I don't know if you know this, but Raymond Lee can sing. I hope we do some episodes where he performs because he has a gorgeous voice and soulful as Get Out, all Get Out.
Soundtrack CD.
Soundtrack CD, exactly. And Ian, they also have an amazing voice. So between the two of them, I think, it could be a really fun scenario to tell a story. Scott certainly was, anything you asked of him, he just kind of said, oh yeah, I can do that. Except for the episode where he was a catcher in the circus.
Yeah.
Felt so bad for him. He had to swing upside down for hours. And I just felt so bad for him. But Quantum Leap can be anything and can do anything. And the more talented the actors are, the more exciting the possibilities of storylines are. In family style, we got to talk about being an immigrant. Again, that moment where Kathy has blown up the place and she's talking to she's talking to the firemen and says, well, you give immigrants from another country a shot and look what they do and whatnot. And then when Ben comes up to her and says, you blew up this restaurant, you burned this restaurant. And she said, I never would. And she said, and if you tried to tell anybody, who would they believe? It was such a powerful Karen statement of, I'm better than you. I'm white. You're brown. Get used to it. And to me, on a whole other level, it opens a thought process and possibly a conversation with people who never talk. We live in a country where people forget how to talk to each other. They just go, you don't like it. I like it. We don't have anything in common. But the truth is, there's so much that you have in common. And if it did what the original series did, which was to open a dialogue, then the power of television, the power of good writing, becomes even more important. And that's what I saw when we first created Quantum Leap. And the opportunity to do it again is here. The right people to do it again is right here. And the audience, obviously, are coming to the table. So tweet me your favorite food. Tweet me your favorite family story. If you're an immigrant, tweet me something, or come to thevisionquest.com and send me a letter under contact. I try very hard to answer them. And then also, let me know how you feel about the show. How did this show make you feel? I'm telling everybody I have a new book coming out called Mirrors. The Dragon Mirror is the first in the series. And if you go to mirrorsthenovel.com, it's just going up. So it's a really fresh series. But come and check it out. I'm creating new stuff all the time. So I'm writing. I'm growing. Let me put it that way.
Well, that's fantastic. We will look forward to checking that out. Deborah, thank you again for your time. And on behalf of the Leapers everywhere, thank you so much for being such an integral part of the show and its relaunch, and for sticking close to it to continue to be its guiding light.
We got season 2. Thank you. And thank you, Matt, for the incredible work that you have done on your books. I can't wait to see the new one. I'm very excited about it. Like I said, it has saved me in many an interview.
You flatter me so much.
So I'm really excited to see, to get the new one. And thank you for the time and the effort and the energy in capturing the behind the scenes and the quirkiness of the show and the beauty of the show and the love of the show. And someday I'm going to get them to do a kiss with history. That's what I got to do before. Just one kiss
Absolutely.
with history. And they're tough. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, Deborah.